So tonight, we're continuing the message, all right, on the next step to becoming God's millionaire, all right? Now, last week, I talked to you about the power of 10. And we started talking about potential, okay? And I was telling you how where you are right now is not where you're going to be. What you're doing right now is not what your potential is. It's what you could be doing. I talked about how potential is not what you have right now. It's not the kind of car, the kind of house, the amount of money you have, or amount of money you're making now. Potential is the amount of money you could be making, the car you could have, the house you could be living in, the lifestyle that you could be living in the future, okay? That's what the word potential means. Potential is not where you're at, but where you could be. And of course, we also talked about how potential is not how many people you're helping in this season of your life. Not the hundreds, not the thousands, possibly millions of people that your life could impact, your life could influence. And I believe that the more money we have, the more influence, the more impact that we can make. And that's why we're having this God's Millionaire Movement class. So last week I talked about how, I discovered as a sinner the principle of giving 10 of everything that I received financially from God, and how God turned my life around totally. When I was a sinner, I practiced God's principles and it changed my life. And it's continued to change my life now for the last 30 years. So I encourage people, because a lot of young people, they look at my life, they look at the house I live in, the cars I drive, or they look at maybe a watch that I have on or something like that, and they look at the material things and they say, man, I want that. And I say, no, young man, don't want my things more than you want my principles. Yeah, go hard at learning my principles, because my principles will produce all the material things, but don't want that more than you want what I know in my mind. So today I want to start off with this dynamic of the power of 10. I want to lock into this because I believe it's the core principle for you to become a multimillionaire, even possibly a billionaire, okay? Now I'm reminded of these two guys. They're out sailing in the Gulf of Mexico, and a big storm came and it wiped them out on a small little tiny island, total deserted. It was deserted island, and the two guys are like, what are we going to do? Here we are, we're on this deserted island. Nobody knows we're here. Well, the one guy was like freaking out. He's like, man, there's no food here. There's no water here. How are we going to get back? He's stressing. And the other guy's like, yeah, no problem. And the guy's like, how can you be so calm? How can you be so assured that we're going to get out of this? We're going to die. And the other guy's like, nah, everything's going to be all right. He says, well, how do you know everything's going to be all right? And he says, I'm a tither at my local church, and I give $100,000 a year to my church. I know my pastor will find me. So I just want to start our time with that. And I want to say this as we get started. One of the most famous Christian gurus on finance, he has he calls it the 7 baby steps to getting out of debt. And when you look at those 7 baby steps, I was quite shocked, to be honest with you, that when you look at the 7 baby steps, his last baby step is this: give and build wealth. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. Think about that. The last step of a Christian financial guru, the last step is give and build wealth. I want to tell you, I have a different philosophy. I believe that the first step should be give and build wealth. So I'm saying that it's upside down. The first step to becoming God's next millionaire is building wealth and tithing, those two things. And the first thing we're talking about is tithing. And so I know out there that there's all kinds of attacks against tithing. I know that there's preachers and theologians that are trying to explain it away. But you know, it amazes me. It amazes me. You know, I'm known as America's #1 confidence coach. So I've been around some really wealthy people. I mean, guys who net worth 300 million, 600 million, 1 billionaire. And you know, it's funny, when you get around people who are super wealthy, they're always talking about how can I give more money away, but do it wisely, right? And when I get around some preachers and theologians, you know what I find them talking about? They're trying to use the Bible to figure out how they can get out of giving money away. And I want to encourage you, all right, because you're part of my tribe, right? I want to encourage you to understand that you got to model who produces success. Always model success. Always learn from those who are wealthy. Never grab on to the principles of those who are not wealthy. Okay, do you get that? So here we have a bunch of theologians and some preachers, not all of them, but some preachers who want to tell you not to give and to ignore the principle of the tithe, that it's obsolete. But they don't have any wealth. Okay? and maybe they may have a little bit, but when you get over here to the people who are super wealthy, let me tell you, the principle I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to prove it. Some of the most wealthiest people in the history of the world have practiced the power of tithing and the power of giving back. And so you got to decide, which way am I going? Am I going to go the way of the teachings of the broke people, or am I going to go in the way of the teaching of the super wealthy? For me, I choose to go towards the path of those who get results. Not the talkers, but those who produce results. And so I want to just start off with you by sharing with you, when you look at the Bible, okay? The Jews, as far as the Old Testament goes, the Jews are some of the wealthiest people in the world. They control the majority of the wealth in the world. And the reason why they do that is because they follow a kingdom principle that God established years ago called the power of tithe. Now, to the Jew, Abraham is their father. I mean, for the Christian, we say, you know, Jesus is the model that we look at. To the Jew, they look at Abraham. And the Bible tells them to look at your father Abraham and model him. Do what he does. And you'll find that in Isaiah 51 verse 2. So to the Jew, they study everything about Abraham and they do what he does. Now, one of the things you'll begin to discover is that in Abraham's life, as you study his life, in Genesis 14:20, we find that Abraham goes out to a battle and he wins this battle and he gets all of these spoils. And he gets a lot of gold, a lot of silver, and then he runs into this guy called Melchizedek. And when he runs into Melchizedek, Abraham does a very interesting thing. It says there in Genesis 14:20, it says, "And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." And he, meaning Abraham, gave him, Melchizedek, a tithe of all that he had. Wow. I want you to get that. So Abraham increases, and the moment he increases, he runs into Melchizedek, who was a king and a priest in that day, and he gives him a tithe of everything. Now, this is before the law is ever introduced. So some people say, well, you know, tithing is of the law. So in the law, we're free from the law because we're Christians, so we no longer have to tithe anymore. But this principle was instituted before the law ever started. Okay? And I believe the power of 10 actually happened in the garden. And I could talk a whole lot about that, but we don't have time for that in this short little time that we have together. But I just want to show you what happened to Abraham. Abraham, because we want to follow and model success. We want to model the wealthy, not the wannabe. Okay? So Abraham, he gave 10. Now, I want you to think about this. Why didn't he give 5%? Why didn't he give 8? Why didn't he give 20? Why didn't he give 50? Why did he specifically give 10? See, I believe that this principle of God was passed down from Adam and Eve. That's why he gave 10%. He knew it was a principle. So he gave 10%, and watch what happened. If you flip over to the end of his life in Genesis 24 verses 34 and 35, his servant, not Abraham, but his servant said this, "The Lord has blessed my master abundantly, and he has become" what? Wealthy. He has given him, meaning God has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold. Starts off with silver because in Bible days, silver was actually more valuable than gold. He's given him silver and gold, men servants and maid servants, and camels and donkeys. Wow. So Abraham's servant acknowledged that Abraham became a super wealthy person. So at the beginning, at the start, Abraham gave 10%, and you look at the end of his life, you see a man who's super blessed by God. That's me. I started off my life giving 10%, and now you look at my life today, and God has supernaturally blessed me. You'll find this pattern throughout history, especially Bible history, because we know that Abraham tithed, Isaac tithed, Jacob tithed. And when we find that there's this passing on of this principle of this 10%, and that every man of God who gave 10 became wealthy and became a prosperous person. Now, not only do we have it in Bible times, and I could really go on for a lot of hours over this, but when we look over at history, okay, let's just take America for instance. I believe America is one of the most blessed and prosperous nations because we give. In the last video I said life is all about giving. And because America is always there when people are in crisis, when people have tough times, we're there, we give, we help, we support. I believe our nature of giving is why we've become one of the most blessed nations on the earth. Now, during the Industrial Revolution, we find the very first billionaire. Now, this is in the 1920s, okay? Think about that. To become a billionaire in the 1920s is huge. And the first billionaire that ever entered into that status was John D Rockefeller. Now, it's interesting, John D Rockefeller, he created the Standard Oil business. John D Rockefeller was brought up in a Baptist church, and he was taught from a young boy, from his parents, the principle of 10, the principle of tithing. And I love it because he said this. He said, "I would never been able to tithe 10% on my first $1 million if I had not learned to tithe on my first paycheck, which was $1.50 a week." Wow, think about that. So here it is. I mean, who do you want to model? Do you want to model somebody that had super wealth, or do you want to model people who want to teach you something that they don't have any wealth? I'd rather model success. And this guy said, "Man, I believe the key to my wealth is when I tithe on the first $1.50 that I received." That's amazing. And I want you to see this. There's a whole bunch of other guys in the industrial age that embrace this principle. I want to just point these out to you because they're amazing. William Colgate with Colgate toothpaste. J.L. Kraft with Kraft macaroni and cheese. Man, I don't know about you, but I had enough of that back in my poor days. I lived on macaroni and cheese. How about Henry John Heinz with Heinz ketchup? Wow. Multi-millionaire. Hilton Hershey that created Hershey bars. How about this guy? James Penny. His middle name's Cash. James Cash Penny. Man, with the middle name Cash, you got to become wealthy, right? Created JCPenney shopping, JCPenney, the store, the retail chain. Henry Cornwell of Quaker Oats. I love this next guy. Samuel Truett Cathy, who created Chick-fil-A. Wow, what an example we have right there in our modern age of a Christian man who tithes. Now, he learned tithing from Sir John Templeton, who became the richest investor in his day. So he was like the Warren Buffett of yesterday, okay? So he controlled, I forget what it was, I think over $100 billion of money that he controlled in investing. And he learned from him because John Templeton was a dedicated tither. He believed that tithing and prayer together was the key to building a wealthy lifestyle. Amazing story. And Samuel Truett Cathy was influenced by him and started tithing at a young age. And now they have one of the most successful brands literally in the world. I mean, everybody loves Chick-fil-A. And so it's really neat to see. So these are just a couple of examples that I'm giving you that are quite amazing. And so we have this long history, not only Bible history, but we have a practical history of people who have done it. I like this next one. One of the first millionaires, they say she was the first black millionaire in Black Enterprise. I talked to the guy, and he thinks that she was the first black millionaire, was a woman. It's amazing. Isn't that cool? The first black millionaire was a woman, and her name was Mary Ellen Pleasant. And back in the 1920s, and she became a millionaire. It's amazing. And she was a tither. Now here's the next one. The first woman billionaire was black, and her name is Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah, she was raised Baptist, and from the time she was a child, she tithed 10%. So I'm just giving you all these examples because it's quite amazing as you begin to look at all of these examples of people who gave 10% and God blessed their life amazingly. And we have some people who, also we got LL Cool J. He's a tither. He gives 10% to his local church. And then even, this may shock you, Kim Kardashian claims that she has continually given 10% away of everything that comes into her life. And I want to emphasize this to you again. Giving 10% is a principle of God. I know people want to say, but we're under grace. Grace frees us from the rituals of the Old Testament, but it doesn't free us from the principles of the Old Testament. Yeah, the principle of the Old Testament is still true. If you're lazy, you'll end up in poverty. That's a principle, right? And there's also a principle called giving. If you give back, you're going to reap a harvest. As long as the earth remains, seed, time, and harvest will remain in the earth. So I want to move into this, okay? A poverty mindset formula. A formula that's going to work against you in becoming God's next millionaire is this. 100% of what comes into my life, here's how poor people think, middle class people think. 100% of what comes into my life, when I give 10%, 100% minus 10% equals what? 90%. This is logical math, which you don't want to have. You want to have a kingdom millionaire mentality. So I give you this kingdom millionaire formula. Here's how you got to start thinking. 100% of what comes into my life, it's not minus, but it's 100% times 10 equals 1,000. Now see, that is spiritual math. That's how God sees everything. When we release something out of our hands, God says He will multiply that which we give. This is kingdom mentality, that as I give, more's going to come back to me. See, that's the abundant mentality. The scarcity mentality says, oh, when I give, I'm losing. When I give, I'm losing. And guess what happens? You lose. But the kingdom mentality says, the more I give, the more that's circulating and it's coming back to me. I want you to get this, my friend. Giving is the proof that you believe that your future is going to be more prosperous in your tomorrow. See, giving today is proof that I'm going to be more prosperous in my tomorrow. If you hold on, what you're saying is, man, I don't believe in myself. Get that? I don't believe in myself, so I got to hold on to the little I do have. But when you develop a kingdom millionaire mentality, you start saying, I believe in my ability to create wealth. And because I believe in God, I believe in myself, I am going to give, I'm going to release, because it's going to come back to me, and it's going to come back to me multiplied. So 2 Corinthians 9:10 teaches us that wonderful principle. Now let me give you, my time's almost up, but I want to give you the power of 10 benefits. 10 benefits of tithing. Number one, when you tithe, understand this. You will receive million and billion dollar ideas. And this is so important. See, what you need as a kingdom millionaire is you need ideas. Million and billion dollar ideas. That's what you want. Because $1 million idea is better than $1 million. You want $1 million ideas. And unfortunately, as a church, we have not taught you right. We've just taught you just give, just give, just give. And it's like this concept of God's going to just wave His wand and bling, miracle checks are coming in the mail. Praise the Lord. And you keep going to your mailbox and there's nothing there. So we've been having a wrong mindset, and we've got to teach people to have a right mindset. Is when you give, when you sow, look for $1 million ideas to be dropped down from heaven for you. All right, so now let's talk about the power of 10 benefits. Benefit number one is that God will give you million and billion dollar ideas. When I say that, I think of my friend Jack Canfield. Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen wrote the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. Well, when they first started, they had this big desire to do something that's never been done before. They wanted to write an inspirational book that were full of inspirational stories that just encourage people from their soul, okay? Now, they tried and tried and tried to get that book published by a publisher, and they failed, I think, over 100 times. Well, Jack was a tither, so Jack one day walks out in his woods and just looks up towards heaven and says, God, I need an idea that can get this book spread all over the world. And at that moment, God asked him a question. He said, Jack, when your body was physically sick, what did your mom give you to heal your physical body? He said, chicken soup. And then he heard God say, well, why don't you call the book Chicken Soup for the Soul, since you're trying to heal the soul? And ladies and gentlemen, the rest is history. 500 million books later. See, one idea from God is all you need to become a millionaire and a billionaire for the rest of the days of your life. Sadly, in the church, we don't know the difference between how God blesses a preacher versus how God blesses somebody who's sitting in the congregation. God's plan has always been to bless God's man through the offerings in the local church. That's how God wants to take care of his leaders and take care of the temple of God. But how God blesses people in the congregation is different. And I think that's where we get things confused. We think that God's going to give us some miracle money or somebody's going to take up an offering for us. And let me tell you, that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to take up an offering for you, I highly doubt, at church. But what God does special for you, it's better. God gives you these million and billion dollar ideas. But watch, we receive not because we ask not. We haven't been taught to ask. And we sure haven't been taught to listen. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So you listen twice as much as you talk. So a lot of people, they talk, pray. And sometimes you just need to get in a place of silence and listen and think. And you can hear God give you strategies on how to change your financial situation around. So, benefit number 1, you get million and billion dollar ideas from God. Number 2, financial increase. Benefit number 3, job promotions. Benefit number 4, divine connections to people who can help you, get you to where you need to go. Some of you only need 1 or 2 connections that can totally change your financial situation. And tithing gets that. Number 5, open doors. Number 6, divine protection of what you do have. Number 7, divine healing. Number 8, strategic plans. Number 9, solutions to problems. And number 10, accelerated change. Wow, look at those 10 benefits. Now, any benefit from God has to be activated by faith. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they say to me, well, Keith, I tithe, but things haven't changed. And you know what I find in the church? A lot of people, they get in this habit of just giving 10%, but they're not mixing any faith to believe for the benefits that tithe produces. So they just walk up, throw the check in, and hum-dee-dee-dee-hum-dee. Oh no. See, when I give, I go back to the principle I taught you in the last session. Something good is going to happen to me. I believe that while I tithe, something, as I release what's in my hand, there's something that's going to happen. Providence is moving in my future. And God is going to move to give me those million and billion dollar ideas. God's going to bring financial increase. God's going to bring me promotion. God's going to bring divine connections for me. God's going to protect me. God's going to open up doors. God's going to bring healing. God's going to bring strategic plans. God's going to bring solutions to my problems. And God's going to bring accelerated change. Now when I give, I activate my faith. And I believe God for the benefits that comes along with practicing this principle. And guess what? That changed my attitude. So when I'm believing and expecting, I'm sending that out throughout the world. And guess what happens? When I send out expectation, things start coming. Things start happening in my life because my psychology is right. All right? Now I'm beginning to build the millionaire mindset. Because Wealth Tribe is all about, first I got to get you in a millionaire mindset. Then if I can build a millionaire mindset, I can create millionaire habits. Millionaire habits. Millionaires expect great things to happen to them. And guess what happens? It happens, right? Now I get you into millionaire habits. Now we get into millionaire habits. Now millions start being attracted. And then you move into millionaire status. So that's why I believe the power of 10 is so very important. So there's some of you out there, you're giving, but you say, man, it hasn't worked. Mix faith with it. Start believing for great things to happen. There's some of you out there that you started tithing, but then you gave up. You threw in the towel. You said, man, this doesn't work. But the principle here is you got to realize that sometimes there's a time frame that you've got to walk through. That you start doing a principle and things don't turn out right away. Things don't start showing up right away. But you don't live your life by miracles. You live your life by principles. That's what millionaires do. You know, poor and middle class people, they live their life by miracles, hoping, wishing, praying, rubbing rabbits' foot, sleeping under pyramids, hugging trees. That's what poor and middle class people, their only strategy is, I hope things get better. And hope is not a strategy, okay? So it's very important for you to realize this concept, if it hasn't been working for you, maybe it's not that the principle doesn't work. Maybe you need to understand some more principles. Maybe you're giving 10%, but you are not doing what's right with the 90%. Did you get that? You can give 10% away and still be broke because you're not knowing how to manage the 90% right. You could give 10% away, but you still have a broke theology, which is what I'm going to talk about in the next session, is building a kingdom millionaire philosophy. That's the next session we're going to talk about. So here you are, you're giving 10% away, but you don't have a kingdom millionaire philosophy. So the 90% you're doing a whole lot of wrong with because you don't have right thinking, all right, about money. So it's not working for you. That's why you need to be part. This next session is going to be completely awesome. You need to make sure next week you are part of this next training, because it's that one is going to be a mind shifter. Some of you have heard these principles, but the next one's going to be a massive change in your belief system, okay? Setting the sail of a new philosophy for you. It's going to be powerful, all right? And then there's some of you who are here and joining us. You've never committed. You never committed yourself to the power of 10, to giving 10% of everything that comes into your life back away. So I want to challenge you who've never tried it. I want to challenge you to do it. It worked for me when I was a sinner, and it still works for me today. It is the foundational principle of why I've become the success that I am today. And I want to tell you, if you work the principle, it'll work. And I'm going to be honest with you. There were seasons in my life where, if you looked at everything in the natural, there were times when I was tempted to think, wow, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe I need to stop doing this. Yeah, life is a journey. There's times when you're on the mountaintop, and there's times you got to come off the mountaintop and go through the valley. There was times in my life where my family members looked at the situation we were in. They looked at us living with my mother-in-law, and they made fun of us and laughed at us, right? And said, wow, they give all their money to the church. And yet we kept with the principles. We didn't give up our principles. We stuck with it. And let me tell you something. The ones who made fun of us are the ones who want to borrow money from us now. And that'll be your life in the future. But you just got to stick with the principles. And those principles, here's what I found, will produce the miracles from God. I hope you've enjoyed this. Make a commitment, no matter where you're at, that you're going to take the first step to becoming a kingdom millionaire. And it starts with potential. The Secret Power of 10. You may want to pick up this book. It's full of these stories and many more that I shared with you today about this awesome principle that can change your life. So thank you for joining us tonight. If you've enjoyed this teaching, will you do me a favor? Share it, okay? Just share it. Let's start off by giving. Just by clicking the button. That's all you got to do. Get out of being a consumer, get into being a producer. Just click the button, share it, say, hey, this is a great message. I want to share it. Touch me tonight. I'll be so appreciative. Don't forget that Wealth Tribe. Man, Wealth Tribe, my team's going to post a link there. I want you to be a part of my community. It's part of a group of people that I'm building, that I'm going to invest the rest of my life in, helping them become God's next millionaire. You're part of that. And it's a whole online platform to bring training to you, to bring mentoring to you, and to provide a sense of community. I want you to go over there at wealthtribe.tv. Check out the platform. We're running a special right now. What's going to be $2.99 per month, it's only $89 per month right now. As you get in on this the early start of this movement, you can be part of my Wealth Tribe, and I'll be so excited that you become part of the team, because I'm looking as a team. We need each other to do big things in the earth for God. So God bless you tonight, and please post down below any questions that you have, because in the next session I'm going to be answering some of those questions that you have. God bless you. Have a great night. Talk later.